So imagine getting an iPhone around 2009, 2012 and checking out its app store. You'd see tons of great apps like Cut the Rope, Doodle Jump, Angry Birds, and more. Well, we're not talking about any of those. We're talking about games that are ports to iOS. Weirdly enough, there's tons of them, and still are. Some games are just perfect on a phone, like say Tetris, Uno, Roller Coaster Tycoon, and Balloons Tower Defense. But there's also the weird ones, and that's what we're here to talk about. Let's start off with something anyone can recognize. That's right, Street Fighter 2 on iOS. Now, this is actually really interesting. It's three Street Fighter 2s, the World Warrior, Champion Edition, and Hyper Fighting. It's touch controls, and it's not good. I'm not a fan of touch controls. There's these S buttons, which are special moves. Using the stick, pushing the button, and it just does an instant special move. It's not that, it's fun, it makes the game easy, but that's basically it. There's multiplayer, and it uses Bluetooth, and I couldn't get it to work with video, but it's pretty good. There's presets to configuration on the buttons, and there's also custom, which helps with larger hands. There's a screen size button, which makes it smaller. Imagine that on your iPhone. Anyways, it's a weird but nice port of three great fighting games. Touch controls suck, but the game plays perfectly. Next up is
Marvel vs. Capcom 2. New Age of Heroes.
Marvel vs. Capcom 2? Yeah, actually, Marvel vs. Capcom 2 was on iOS. But it's weirdly bad. Not just because of touch controls, but because of a laggy frame rate. It's not that good because of it. It basically makes it the worst port of Marvel vs. Capcom 2 there is. But it's the newest of them, being released in 2012, when the 360 and PS3 ports were in 2009. The game looks fantastic, almost like the Dreamcast, PS2, and original Xbox versions, just with touch controls. But it doesn't play like that. The controls are basically the classic. You have your four main buttons and your two character and special buttons. But these character buttons are swipe-based. Swiping in different directions cause different results, like being able to swap characters out, have them tag in, and doing a special, which is hard for me to do. But it's possible, no doubt. This game is basically like the original console versions, meaning you gotta grind for points and arcade mode multiple times to unlock everything. And it's tiring. I didn't even do it for this video. There's versus mode, again using Bluetooth, but I couldn't get it to work still. Training mode's here, basically the same as always, but it's good to help to learn these controls. In the end, it's a mediocre port with bad frame rate, but stays true to Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Up next are some classics we all know, but aren't what we think they are. So, in 2005, Namco Museum Battle Collection was released on the PSP. It had these arrangements of Pac-Man, Dig Dug, Galaga, and Rally X. But in 2008 and 9, they were re-released on iOS as remixes, except Rally X. All of them got the arcade games in the same app, except for Pac-Man, which they were selling separately. The classic versions are played in portrait, while the remixes are played in landscape. In my opinion, Dig Dug and Galaga are great ports of the PSP version, and look and play almost as if they were still on the PSP. Pac-Man remix though. So the PSP version, it used 3D models, and it looked fine. It didn't play perfectly, I didn't like it, but it was fine. The iOS version doesn't use models, it uses images. So the gameplay is also slower, and the animations are choppy and laggy. And the worst thing is the D-pad is centered. So on tablets and phones, it It's weird to play and it's uncomfortable. Galaga and Dig Dug have cornered D-pad, so it plays perfectly fine. But Pac-Man Remix is one of the worst ways to play this PSP arrangement. Galaga and Dig Dug remixes are perfectly fine, and are good replacements for the PSP version. Now, on the topic of Namco games, here's Mappy for iOS, which in my opinion is the definitive version of the game. It's Mappy, the arcade game, with improvements and new sprites and even a new game mode. The sprites aren't that perfect, but they were made so the game looked better on a phone instead and wasn't really made for a TV. The game plays perfectly like the original, and the improvements of being able to see the Mukis in Goro when they're off the stage. During the special music stages, you have a timer in the corner which tells you how much time is left, and it's actually really helpful. The new mode is called Scramble, and it's actually really interesting and fun to play. The main goal is to use the microwave doors to get as many of the Mukis off the screen for points, but there's power-ups to help you out. The fish makes Mukis go for it, and they'll stay there trying to eat it. The feather and weight are speed and slow power-ups. Feather only affects your speed, and it's really quick, but the weight only affects the Mukis, and it's really helpful to slow them down. The star is just an invincibility, you can pass through everyone, and the clock adds more time, and the hourglass freezes all Mukis, no matter where they are, while the bed only affects Mukis not on trampolines. There's double and triple point items, and a sewing machine, which makes trampolines impossible to break until it runs out. And during the last seconds, it spawns in the coin, which is an instant death if touched. And once the game ends, it's just your score. Mappy for iOS is just a great version of the arcade original, and if it was still in the store, I would have highly recommended it to anyone. Now, Pacmania is not a bad port. It doesn't really improve on things, but it's a nice and simple port of the game, with some nice backgrounds and control themes. The biggest problem has to be with his speed and jump. In the main game, he feels slow, and his jumps are half of what the arcade version was. And it messes things up sometimes when I'm trying to prepare a jump and miss and hit the ghost. But the port is really good in everything else, and especially in its extra mode. Scramble mode is just a collectathon of pellets, and you get extra points for, say, jumping over a ghost or two ghosts. There's not really any extra power-ups, but what's fun is when you complete a row of pellets, you get extra speed and better jump. And it's fun, because who wouldn't want to play a fast version of Pacmania? Once the time runs out, it's over. Pacmania is one of the best Pac-Man arcade games, and seeing it on iOS is great, but this version isn't perfect. But it's still a port I can respect. Now our last classic port is Rayman 2. Now, this is cool. It was one of the big iOS ports to be shown off, and it's a great port of the game, if you don't hate touch controls. It's based off of the Dreamcast version, so it looks and plays great. It's a great game, and playing it on mobile isn't that bad. The frame rate stays at 60 FPS, and it has a nice, smooth camera, and it's Rayman 2, so it's already a great game. It was removed from the App Store 3 years later, and that kind of sucks that it died so soon. The game is just Rayman 2, so there's nothing much to change about it. Touch controls are fine, and the swipe to camera is amazing in my opinion. It's smooth. In some parts of the game, they added in motion controls. They aren't forced. You could just tap a side of the screen and it'll move. But it's still oddly weird that they added it in. If you have a way to play this port on your phone, I'd recommend it, because it's just as good as the 3DS counterpart, and nothing was removed. Now that's all the classic ports I have, but iOS phones nowadays have tons of better and cooler ports. Like, now you can easily connect any Bluetooth controller and play games like it's a console. You got an Xbox or PlayStation controller, you can hook it up and then boom, game. Minecraft looks really close to the other versions out there. If you don't use any touch controls, it just looks like the same version of Minecraft everyone else has. Doom, Bobble, and Sonic 1 are here. They're all really good versions of the games. Doom is its widescreen, more modern version of the game with controller support, cheats. It's really nice. Play on mobile specifically. It's like playing the Switch version, but with any controller you want. Bobble Classic is the arcade version of Bobble. It's simply just Bobble, but you can spend gems on items or continues. And Sonic 1's in widescreen. It's one of the definitive ways to play it. It's smooth, adds more characters. I like it. I played it all the time. The GTA trilogy is here, and that's really cool. It's widescreen, they made the models look better, but some of the good music was removed, and it has a lot of glitches. But modern control support is nice. Being able to just connect it to a TV is a great feature. And the Castle of Illusion remake is here. My god, is it really cool. It's still getting updates for modern phones and tablets. It doesn't have any controller support, which sucks, but it's a great game. I would recommend anyone to play it. If you have the time, try it. Now, we have one big game I want to talk about. Spongebob, Battle for Bikini Bottom, Rehydrated for iOS. Yeah, that's right. It's not only portable, but it runs even better than the Switch port and looks graphically better too. The game works with the controller, and touch controls work perfectly too. But this port is ridiculous to me. I mean, it's a modern remake of a classic game on your mobile device running better than a Nintendo console. And it gives me hope to see even better ports to iOS in the future. And that's all I gotta say for today. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you all soon. See ya!